Hi, everybody. My name is Joshua Vonderheide, and I am the founder of the Percussion Conservatory, where I am so happy to be welcoming our next guest on A Percussion Story, Mr. Joseph Gramley. And Joe is the percussion chair at the Indiana University Jacobs School of Music. He is a multi-percussionist. He is a solo percussionist. He is a founding member of the Silk Road Ensemble. He used to run the Juilliard Summer Percussion Seminar. He has taught at Michigan. He has been all over the world. He knows how to play every instrument. The New York Times thinks that he's just about the best marimba player in the world. And I could just go on and on and on, but you're going to have to read his Wikipedia article. So thank you, Joe, so much for being here. We're going to dive straight into our first question, which is tell us a little bit about your early musical background, your first experience with percussion, and when you knew that you wanted to major in percussion or music.
Great. Well, first off, Josh, thanks for having me on. It's a real honor and a real pleasure. My musical background started when I was 8 years old. We had a piano in the house, and I wanted to learn how to play piano. And so I started with private lessons. My mom found a very, very good teacher. And I think this is going to be a through line today, is how important our teachers and our mentors are to our success, but more so to our learning opportunities, to our growth, and to our happiness as we all sort of forge a life in music. So I was 8 years old, and my mom found a great teacher for me, Marie Siegel. She had a love of music, and she gave off this beautiful energy, a positive energy around music, and she was an excellent first teacher for me. While I was studying piano at age 8, I became interested in the drums. I didn't know what the word percussion was. I don't think I'd ever heard it before. I definitely didn't know how to say it. I thought it was the drums, and I wanted to. So my mom made a deal with me. If I practiced and stayed with it for 1 year, I could take drum lessons. And so I did. I stuck with it for a year. And after 1 year, my mom honored our deal and found me a percussion teacher. So I grew up in a small town in Oregon. In fact, there were no percussion teachers in my town. This was near Eugene, Oregon, maybe 30 minutes outside of Eugene, between Eugene and Corvallis. And there are two universities in each of those towns. University of Oregon is in Eugene, and Oregon State University is in Corvallis. At the time, Oregon State didn't have a music program or a music department, nor a percussion teacher. So my mom found me a percussion teacher at the University of Oregon. Concurrent with that, I'm the youngest of 6. And at age 8, my mom also decided to go back to college to get her master's and her PhD. Yeah. So I would drive with my mom to U of O. I would have my percussion lessons. She would go to class. I got very, very lucky. She found me a really good teacher. He was a master's student at U of O. And you know, when you're 9 years old, someone who's a master's student, you think they're like really, really old, right? Yeah. So I was scared. I was nervous. Turns out his name is Alan Cowan, Keown. And he has actually gone on to a great career in music as a teacher, player, pedagogue, specifically and successfully in the marching arts. He also has a son named Matthew Cowan, who has gone on to a really good career in music as well, and who happened to also be a former student of mine at the Juilliard Summer Percussion Seminar. So I started at age 9 on the drums. Actually, it wasn't even a drum. I played practice pad for a year before I got my first set of drums, and I got a 4-piece Rogers drum set. So this went on, started to join the junior high band. Yes, I am that old that it was still junior high. Middle school didn't exist yet. The next year was the first year of quote unquote middle school. Joined the band, played in the Eugene Youth Symphony for 2 years. And then something really major happened in my life. I wanted to get more experience. And my second teacher, Randy Larson, who was in the Eugene Symphony, told me about a music camp, which was in Interlochen, Michigan. Back then, it was called the National Music Camp. It was 8 weeks long, and I was 15 years old now. And I went there. We abbreviated it as NMC, National Music Camp. I think they've changed the name now to Interlochen Center for the Arts. I went there at age 15, and very surprisingly to me, I did really well in the first audition for placement. In fact, I got first, which was just a big shocker to me. I don't know how it happened, but back then at Interlochen, they had what were called challenges. The players below you in the orchestra or the band could challenge up, and they could bring up.
Oh, I love this. I love this. Challenges. Oh my
So
goodness. Okay.
the older players are like, okay, there's this kid from Oregon, from this farm, and okay, here we go. So they all challenged me in the first week, and I dropped to fifth. I stayed in the top orchestra, but by the end of the summer, I was still around about fifth. These players were really good, and I really, really looked up to them. Turns out 3 of them went to this school called the Interlochen Arts Academy. So I wanted to be like them. I wanted to play like them. I wanted to be as good as they were. I went home to Oregon, said, Mom, Dad, I'm going to go to the Interlochen Arts Academy. They said, no way. Maybe next year you can go. You need to get a scholarship. You need to keep up your grades, and we will consider it. So sophomore year, I transferred high schools in Eugene, Oregon. My mom was still a student at U of O, so I would carpool with my mom. South Eugene High School had a music program. They had a band. They didn't have an orchestra, and they had a jazz band. Back then, there really weren't percussion programs. There weren't percussion directors at high schools. We didn't have a percussion ensemble. Got through the year, did okay. Auditioned for the Interlochen Arts Academy, was lucky enough to get a scholarship, and I then went out to Interlochen, Michigan, which is near Traverse City, for my junior and senior years of high school. It got me playing music every day. We had orchestra every morning. We had guest conductors. We had really good players across all the studios, and it was very inspiring. I lived there. It was a boarding school. From this experience, I learned about all the other opportunities that were out there. Basically, I learned about all the schools in the Midwest and all the schools out east. It was then, age 16, that I knew I wanted to major in music, and I knew I wanted to major in percussion.
I love that. That's really interesting story. I mean, I know from another interview as well that your siblings, some of your siblings, I think it was an older brother, like a water polo player,
Yeah.
right? So
Yep.
I mean, we'll talk a little bit later about athleticism at the instruments and stuff. But what a unique story that your mom was studying while you were studying, right? At the
Yeah.
university. That's phenomenal. That's so cool.
Yeah, it's actually really, really inspiring to have 6
Yeah.
kids. And then me being the youngest at age 8, she decided to go back to school. She did finish her master's and her PhD. She had, what we call a graduate assistantship. Her graduate assistantship was to run the child care center at University of Oregon. So I'd finish my class day at South Eugene High School, and I'd walk up the hill, and I'd wait for my mom to get done, and we'd drive home. It was just really, really inspiring. I have 2 older brothers who are really, really good athletes. Andrew is an All-American water polo player. Walter was a state champion wrestler. Andrew was the point guard for the nemesis arch rival high school across town.
Okay.
I never ever beat either one of them in any sport. So maybe
But
this,
you can play a mean hand drum.
maybe this pushed me a little more into music.
Yeah, I get that.
Perhaps.
Well, speaking of, you're pushing yourself, age 16, you're like you're finding yourself. I was right around a similar age, and I remember the feeling. It's an intoxicating feeling when you've decided, and you start to have a very linear sort of focused, direction, and you had a lot of different things, and now you have this one thing. And now I want to ask for your overview of your collegiate percussion training. So the prominent teachers, the schools that you went to, the festivals that you attended, what kind of helped shape you once you had made this critical decision?
Sure, Josh. It's a great question. The through line, even until today, were my teachers and my mentors. I selected the 4 schools that I auditioned for. based on the teachers and who I felt would that I would work well with, that I aligned with musically, that I felt could help me technically and musically. The choice came down to two schools when I was 17 years old. They are very, very different schools. One was the University of Michigan in Ann Arbor, very large school, 45,000 students. The other was the Juilliard School in New York, 900 students. Um, it was a tough decision. I remember I went home for spring break from Interlochen, and my dad was always giving me these jobs around the house. And my job during this spring break was to clean the roof of the barn. So I remember I took a pillow up there to sit on as I scrubbed the top of the barn. And so this was, I guess, March, maybe, and decision time was coming up. And I remember my parents at the same time, they walked out of the house and they stood on the ground below the barn and they're like, okay, you need to make your decision on school. When your parents both walk up to you at the same time and want to talk to you,
Yeah.
it's something serious is about to happen.
Yeah.
So we had a short conversation, um, and I decided to go to the University of Michigan.
Mm.
Part of that was built upon where my parents went to school, more liberal arts education. And also, now everyone was out of the house. It was just me since I was the youngest. And also, where my brothers went to school, also colleges and universities built on a liberal arts education. So I chose the University of Michigan for that reason. And I chose the University of Michigan because of my future teachers.
Mm.
At that time, Dr. Michael Udow was the professor at Michigan. Our story as percussionists is much more truncated than other instruments. We're still fairly new. And Mike Udow was actually one of the first to get a doctorate in percussion.
Mm.
Um, I started undergrad in 1988. And I hope all of you who are listening and watching this, please don't do the math. um, So I chose U of M, and I wanted to study with Michael Udow. Also teaching at the University of Michigan was the principal timpanist of the Detroit Symphony, Mr. Salvatore Robbio. And so each student there would alternate each week between Professor Udow and Mr. Robbio. Mondays were timpani lessons, and then the following week you had your lesson with Professor Udow. They were my prominent teachers during undergrad. Professor Udow went on sabbatical, and he had two sabbatical replacements, Alan Abel and Julie Spencer, both of whom shaped my playing and my understanding of music and ways of listening. Julie Spencer and Alan Abel play very different types of music. They're very different types of people. I just tried to get and grab and hold on to as much as I could from each teacher. What I got from those four teachers was an appreciation of tonal support, sense of line, arc of line, phrasing, and sound. Yes, they taught technique and they taught the ways and the tools how to achieve that. Um, but at the end of the day, it was about sound and musicianship. And that has been my life's goal and my life's dream, to try to impart that, to try to show that, to try to play in that way that, reaches people, that moves people. Um, Later on, I'm going to talk a little bit about Yo-Yo Ma, and we used to do a lot of master classes together on tour. And one master class really stuck with me. He came up with an acronym, CCR. For us older folks, you might think it's that older band, Creedence Clearwater Revival. Not. CCR is content, communication, reception. The music is the content. We, you and I, who's ever playing, is the communicator. Our audience is the receptor. And our goals as musicians first, percussionists, drummers, is to reach that listener. And that's what my collegiate percussion training taught me. Uh, U of M for undergrad, and then I went to Juilliard for grad school.
Mhm.
I did my master's in 3 years. Each summer, I did a music festival. In the summer of 1988, I went to the Boston University Tanglewood Institute. I studied with Arthur Press, Tom Gager, and John Wire.
Mm.
Vic Firth would take the summers off. And since Seiji Ozawa was the music director of the BSO, he got to choose his timpanist. He chose John Wire from the Toronto Symphony, another very, very different type of player. So I studied with those three teachers at Tanglewood. And then the next summer, I went to the Marlborough Music Festival in Marlborough, Vermont, which is built around chamber music.
Mhm.
I ended up playing at Marlborough for about 15 years. Then, for 3 summers, my first professional gig, I won a job in the Spoleto Festival Orchestra.
Mhm.
Started in Charleston, South Carolina. Back then, it was connected with a festival in Italy.
Mhm.
So we did 6 weeks in Charleston, and we'd already learned the music in Charleston. Then we all flew to Spoleto, Italy, and we did 4 more weeks of work in Italy. Um, those were my most prominent festivals that I took part in. In subsequent years, I would return to Marlborough when they needed a percussionist. Um, and that taught me a lot because I was often the only percussionist there. And so I was learning from other instrumentalists. And it really it gave me this sense of what I call MLC, music learning curve. I think there's PLC, percussion learning curve, and there's MLC, music learning curve. And that's being able to have a conversation with a violinist, with a violist, with a pianist, with a vocalist, to be able to speak their language. Sure, we can talk about gear and mallets and sticks and hardware, whatever, all the percussion stuff. We also need to be able to talk about musical issues as well. So hopefully that overview of collegiate percussion training, teachers, schools, and festivals was helpful, and hopefully what you wanted, Josh.
Absolutely. And how cool that I'm not sure Spoleto still does that anymore. I don't, I haven't heard of that lately. I haven't kept up with the festival scene, to be honest, but that wasn't my understanding when my generation of people was going through it. And that's so awesome. I mean, I spent a few summers in Verbier, Switzerland, at the Verbier Music Festival,
Yeah.
and that really, it expands your mind when you hear everyone playing in Europe and just being in Europe. It's like you feel really like locked back into the source of a lot of where this stuff came from, right?
Mhm.
And yeah, that's fascinating. I did not know that about you. So
Mhm.
thanks for sharing.
My pleasure. And students out there can still audition for Spoleto.
Hmm.
They do an audition tour every summer, but now it's just in Charleston. There was a breakup between the two festivals. It was called Festival dei Due Mondi, Festival of Two Worlds. So they
Uh
did
huh.
Charleston, then they did Italy. It was founded by the composer Giancarlo Menotti.
Okay.
When he passed away, his family had a disagreement with the city of Charleston, so they split up the festival. For a few years, the Juilliard Orchestra did it, actually, in Italy.
Wow.
Then for a few years, a European orchestra did it. I don't know who's doing the Italian portion now. It still exists.
Okay.
But yes, there's still the Charleston Festival. It's every May and June.
YouTube, put it in the comments. Talk to us. What's going on? Spoleto, Italy. We got to figure it out. All right.
That's right. That's right.
So, Joe, what defining moment in your life has had the most significant impact on your career?
um, First and foremost, it was my family.
Mm,
Uh, and later on, I'm going to mention a few things about that, which shaped me as a person. But your question, Josh, is about my career. And it is, it's a very easy answer for me. And that was the day I met Yo Yo Ma. It was around about August 1st, 2000. And I did a workshop at Tanglewood. He had a very good relationship with Tanglewood. He has a house nearby. He plays there every summer. We got to use the festival grounds once the program of Tanglewood Music Center was finished. Um, Yo-Yo didn't play. He had 5 cellists play the 25 commissions that we did. He just walked around and listened. Um, from that, he chose musicians to join the ensemble and then to begin touring. And once we began touring, I realized that he was to become the most significant musical and human impact person in my career.
Mhm.
Every rehearsal, it was 100%. There was never a downward tick in his focus, in his musicianship, in his intensity. Um, he does a lot of things. He did a lot of things back then, and he still does a lot of different things. We as percussionists do a lot of different things. So those were some of the first two things I learned from him. Give everything you can at all times, and be open to trying new things. Luckily, I was able to work with him and for him later on in the history of Silk Road. As I said, it started in the summer of 2000, still going on. Yo-Yo stepped away, and now we have a new artistic director, and that's Rhiannon Giddens. I was lucky enough to tour with Yo-Yo for 20 years. Um, and every rehearsal, every airplane ride, every bus ride, every dinner, I learned something. Just the incredible attention to detail, but yet the incredible sort of empathy and the wanting to learn something. You put up onto the screen multi-percussionist, which, thank you, I like that. When I was 30, I was 30 when I joined the ensemble. That was the year it was founded. Um, at that time in my life, I wanted to be a soloist. So what I had done was I had hired someone to make a logo for me, and it said, I know, it's
Yeah.
funny.
No,
So
not at all. I mean, like, I believe me, I understand is what
yeah,
I'm trying to say. Like, I get it. Yeah.
yeah, cool. So this person wrote Joseph Gramley, multi-percussionist, in this really cool font, and that was on all the materials that I had sent up to Yo-Yo and his team. And at the time, Sony Music was a sponsor of Silk Road. And he would sort of joke with me about it. When he would introduce me at concerts, he would say my name and he'd say multi-percussionist. I don't think had heard those words together before. Anyway, he thought it was funny. I became to think it was funny too, but I also really believe it. You know, we do a lot of different things. And so throughout my time with Yo-Yo and throughout these defining moments of learning from him and the impact that he gave me and that he showed me, it was always a multi-percussion sense. And in Silk Road, we were always learning new instruments. Every piece was brand new.
Mhm.
No other ensemble had this instrumentation. There was no music for this combination of instruments. Every piece we played was brand new,
Mm.
and every piece we played may have had a different percussion instrument that myself and the five other percussionists had to try to learn and achieve good sounds on, musical sounds, communicative sounds. So he defined my approach to music, my understanding, my empathy, my want to learn more. And Yo-Yo had the most significant impact on my career.
That's so beautiful and wonderful. And I'm sure you also have plenty of funny stories about him too.
I do.
But maybe that's for another interview.
Yeah. Maybe
Just
for
when you spend so much time with any, person, it's 20 years of not just as you're saying, like the musical experiences, but like plane rides and bus rides and dinners and all those things. That's really special that after all that time you think of, you can speak so fondly and so positively about him, because it's rare. Most like ensembles break up all the time, like things usually don't go that way. And so he must just be a unique, even among unique individuals in classical music, he must be really pinnacle. So that's so cool, and thank you for sharing.
No,
um,
I appreciate it. It's a really good question. Thank you.
yeah, and so kind of along these same lines, you've had a very multifaceted career. So you have been a soloist, you have multiple solo recording albums. I mean, Gandhina on one of your albums is one of my all-time favorites, super inspiring piece. I played that piece at Juilliard because I loved
Cool.
your performance of it so much.
Thanks.
And many, many other things that you do. I'd love for you to, talk a little bit about your work in the nights and your work at the various places you've taught, and just how you've figured out how to have obviously such elite level time management as you've gone on to do these things.
Well, I just try my best. Thank you. I hope it's elite. I'm just strive. I just strive to be the most prepared that I can, and the nicest person and collaborator that I can. I think that's the real
Mm,
key. You know, it's funny when I talk a lot about with my students about what they want to do with their lives in music.
mhm,
We say the word career, but one of the things I learned from Yo-Yo is to say also a life in music. You know, not all of us are going to go into a full-time career in music.
mhm.
Um, but yet we love it so much that music will be a through line in our lives. And so we can say career and we can say a life in music. I'll just say freshman year of college, I wanted to be principal percussionist of the New York Philharmonic. That was my dream.
Wow.
Sophomore year, I wanted to be a soloist. Junior year, I was back to being orchestrally minded.
Mhm.
Senior year, I wanted to be a timpanist. It changed every year, um, to the point where I think I finally found what I wanted to do, which was I wanted to try to do everything. Yes, for a while, I wanted to be a soloist. Back then, it was 1992, 1993, 1994, 1995. I entered all the competitions. Any competition that accepted a percussionist, I entered it. And we had different competitions back then. Um, I felt that that was going to be one way that maybe I could make it as a soloist. I didn't win every competition. One competition I did win. The prize was I got a manager for a year. And so I got 5 solo gigs out of that. As it went forward, I moved away from wanting to be solely a soloist, and I wanted to be more of a collaborator. So I think I found my niche more in chamber music. When I graduated from Juilliard, I joined a percussion quartet. It was called Ethos Percussion Group. They're still in existence.
Mhm,
I started to freelance and play on Broadway.
mhm,
Through my friends at Marlborough Music Festival, who then some worked at Carnegie Hall, I would get calls to play there at Carnegie Hall with guest groups that would come into town. Um, I began to teach. I taught at Juilliard. I was Daniel Druckmann's assistant for 10 years. And then I took over the direction of the Juilliard Summer Percussion Seminar in, I think, 2000 or 2001. Ran that until 2017. Um, your question, though, was what are the keys to trying to have elite level time management?
yeah.
Um, Way advanced planning when you can.
Mm,
Try to get the music as soon as possible. Get the score, get your part, get a recording. Um, in next week's class that I'm going to present for the Percussion Conservatory, I'm going to talk about approximately 6 or 7 pieces that I've played over the last 9 months. 6 of which are premieres, all brand new, and some of which I got the music just a couple days before. Some of which they changed the music when we got there.
mhm,
Some were recordings, some were live performances at Carnegie. One was as a concerto soloist. Um, each one has different challenges. Each one required a different type of time management. I work backwards from the date of performance. Once I get the music, I look at the score and I study it and I ask myself, okay, how long is it going to take me to learn this? How long is it going to take me to be prepared? Well, I know that for the concerto, if I didn't give it 2 months,
yeah.
I was not going to be ready. For a concerto, you have to walk in and you have to be 100% ready. You have to be ready to lead and follow.
Mm,
You have to be able to make quick adjustments because now you're playing with an orchestra and you're playing with a conductor, but yet you're featured. I find playing a concerto just this whole other like level of preparedness.
mhm,
Um, for chamber music and for chamber orchestra, which is most of what I do now. Um, I count on hopefully enough time to learn the notes. I also count on my colleagues. Uh, they're always going to be there to help you. They're not going to let you fail. Silk Road played this piece called the Taranta Project by a cellist named Giovanni Sollima. One of my colleagues and friends from Silk Road played the part first, and then we would rotate tours. And a tour came up, and I was on the piece. And we did a big summer tour, and we played Tanglewood, we played Wolf Trap, we played Blossom, which is outside of Cleveland, where the Cleveland Orchestra plays, played the Hollywood Bowl. I was really, really, really nervous. And I remember standing off stage. Yo-Yo was there, Johnny Gandelman on violin, Colin Jacobson on viola, Nick Cords. Colin on violin, Nick Cords on viola, me and Yo-Yo. And I look around and I was just very, very nervous. This piece had a huge solo in the middle. And I thought, I don't need to be that freaked out. They're not going to let me fail. That's what I love about chamber music. For me, chamber music is about two things: trust and communication. So your question was about time management. Yeah, it is about time management. How soon can I get the part? How hard is it? How much time is it going to take me to learn it? And then I have to pivot if the parts change, if the parts come in late. Some composers get us the music late. You know that from your rehearsal today, right? So I hope that answers the question. Josh, if you want me to expand upon it, I can. But hopefully that addressed some of your great question.
No, for sure that answers it. I mean, it's interesting to hear about. I mean, everything that you're thinking about with your time management, you're thinking right now about the getting prepared for the music. One of the things I have to think about a lot as well is in running this company is the exact same thing. Like I have to look at the month ahead and be like, we were just talking about this on the phone. Like, how long is it going to take to do this video editing before the thing? Because if we're going live on this day, and you're always working in reverse from when am I actually doing this live? Because that's the only day that ends up. Nah, maybe it's not the only day that matters, but in a way, it's the only day that matters, right? That's your day where the audience is doing the R. They're going to receive on that day, and you need to make sure that you can communicate, right? As we spoke about. So, it's very, very helpful to think of it that way, and you can kind of have these pillars in your schedule, and then work backwards from there. You can fill in the gaps in reverse order. So I love that strategy. And guys, we might not be able to tell from how he's sitting right now, and I know we're online. You might not exactly know, but Joe is 6'5". All right, Joe is 6'5". So I'm curious, Joe, as you're planning all these pieces, like, what do we not know about being 6'5" when you're a percussionist? Because there's not that many of us in the industry who are your height. And I just thought that this was an interesting thing because you come from this family of athletes, and I know that you love the physicality of percussion. I can see that in your playing. So talk to us about being the big man in the industry.
Well, I guess. Thank you. So you might think it's great to be this tall. I think everyone else is normal. I think I'm freakishly tall, but that's the cards that we're dealt. So back when I was growing up, there was no height adjustment, Josh. I see these beautiful instruments behind you. There was no height adjustment. So I carried around these blocks of wood. I have since switched to PVC, those pipe fitting things that you can get at Home Depot and Lowe's. Me and Pablo Riepi have a long stand. We were in the same class at Juilliard, and he was the first person I met when I walked into the building. Very, very nice. So nice. He says he was the first person to grab the PVC to raise a xylophone, marimba, or vibe. I think it was me. I don't know. Anyway, so that's the first thing. You got to have the instrument at the right height. In 1985, there was no height adjustment on anything. So I was always carrying stuff around with me to get the instrument to the right height. I remember my first professional audition, Michael Udau said to me, when you walk in there, if they don't give you time to raise the instrument, then that's a sort of form of discrimination. You got to have the instrument at the right height. I preach that to my students every day. So that's the first thing.
Mm.
Second thing is I'm really lucky. I can reach more things a little easier.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, like I've often thought about this with you. I've seen you play. I've seen lots of videos, and I've played with you in the nights back in the
Mhm.
day, and like just the way you move, I was like, man, he can cover some ground. 5 octaves, he could do six. It's not going to be a
Ah!
problem.
Yeah. Oh, thanks. Um, at Michigan, I did this project with my percussion literature and history class where we did a deep dive into the Mio percussion concerto. It's concerto for percussion and small orchestra. And in the video, I put the three types of snare drums on the other side of the timpani.
Yeah.
I sent it to my teacher, Michael Udo, and he wrote back. He said, Joe, the recording's fine. Good job. Except you need to realize that not very few people are going to be able to play it from your setup. So you may want to consider putting the drums in front of the timpani, closer to the player. So yeah, for me, for multi-percussion, it's great. I can reach almost anything. For stacked vibes and marimba, same thing. I can reach it. Um,
Love that.
so yeah, I guess I'm lucky. But it's not so great on an airplane.
Yeah.
When I buy a car, the only thing I consider is, can I fit? Is it comfortable?
It's just
That's all I
insane.
care
I
about.
mean, flights are already, I was thinking of this. So when I asked this question, I was like, it's an airplane question for me. I was just
Yeah.
hoping that you're going to mention airplanes because all these flights back and forth that I used to do from Malaysia to the United States, being 6'1" on a 14-hour flight is like, no thanks. And I was like, this guy's been on tour everywhere, and you're not on tour as like as an NBA player and they're putting you in a private jet. Like you're on tour, I assume, in a normal airplane, right?
Totally.
And
Yes.
when you're 6'5", and it's like, man, that's like you have suffered for the art form. So kudos to you for for doing the tour. You've been because you've just been all over the world. It was one of the first things I thought of with the question, but I do want to quickly shout out, as you had mentioned, thank you to Majestic Percussion, who sponsors this video cast and who I am an artist with. They have been amazing to us here at the Percussion Conservatory. They sponsor our scholarship. We got 3 snare drums going out to our scholarship winners this year. So please apply to our scholarship, everybody. And that is the easiest marimba in the world to do a height adjustment on. On that side of it, right there above my finger, there's a one-sided crank, and the whole thing goes up on one side or it comes back down on one side. It's awesome. Joe, come over to Team Majestic if you need to do some height. Okay.
Yeah.
Is that a good moment for you to shout out anybody you want to say hi to, Joe?
Sure. Thanks, Josh. I have 4 sponsors that have been with me for many, many years, and I'm grateful for their support. Black Swamp, out of Holland, Michigan, Sabian Cymbals, Innovative Percussion for Mallets, and Yamaha. All really great people, great instruments, and great company. So thank you to those 4 institutions. I really appreciate it.
It's all about, I mean, at the end of the day, like we make music on these instruments, and these companies, man, they work really hard. All these companies that make instruments, they work very, very hard to get this stuff to us, and it all sounds amazing. And it's incredible the amount of just stuff that there is for us to make. I think about like music making as a percussionist, just what would that have looked like a couple hundred years ago? It's like actually impossible. That's why like basically no one was doing, I mean, it's
Yeah.
everything's just changed so drastically with with so many things. But we're super grateful to all of the people who support us. Thanks, guys.
Yeah, I'm gonna check out that single crank on the
Oh, it's
Majestic.
awesome. I got socks on right now, so I'm not going to jump over there. I'm going to be honest. I'm not in my shoes, so I'm not going to put those socks on camera. But we can do a demo. I'll absolutely do a demo, and
Cool.
it's awesome. Joe, your music making. I mentioned this about your Gandhina, but when I was just a little tyke and I was off in high school and I was at JSPS Juilliard Summer Percussion Seminar, you were not just like a large influence on me. You were one of the reasons that I decided that I, definitely wanted to be at Juilliard, and that was like a huge, important moment for me. You gave me the confidence to like audition there at all. There were so many things about that summer that were so transformative for me. And I think the thing that I took away most from your playing was just how joyful it was. I had never seen anyone. I had seen plenty of people play at that point, and I say this very cautiously because there's a lot of people out there who make joyful music. I had never experienced joy the way I had when you played the instruments. And it was so transformative to me to realize like that is what I want to do. I don't care if it's on marimba or if it's on, timpani or percussion, or if I'm doing it here in a video cast or whatever. Like, what really is important to me is that when people have this experience with me, they're sharing their time with me, that they come away from it feeling like that, like the way you made me feel that day when you performed for us at that recital. And I want to know what advice you have for players who are looking to make that deeper connection with their listeners.
Well, Josh, thank you for the kind words. I was always incredibly proud when a student like yourself from Juilliard Summer Percussion Seminar would be accepted to Juilliard. That was the goal of the program. And you yourself getting into Juilliard and then being one of the first recipients of the Kovner Scholarship just made me so proud. I had a very small part in that, but I just wanted to let you know that. I was recently in an orchestra rehearsal, and I know you play a lot of large ensemble orchestral music. It was Kurt Weill Symphony Number 1, which not many of us have played. And this was with the Knights in New York, and I did the part assignments, and I like other people to shine, so I gave my colleagues the bigger parts, and I think I just had a very few notes on bass drum, tam tam, a few cymbal crashes. So I got to sit there a lot and listen, and so I was surrounded by the music, and it gave me joy,
Mm-hmm.
and it made me very happy. That's my goal, is to communicate with my audiences. And I know for a fact that Yo-Yo had a huge impact in me doing that. It's a visual connection.
Mm-hmm.
It's a physical connection. Those work together. It's the way you move on stage. It's the way you look at your audience. It's the way you look at your colleagues. Um, it's the way you smile. It's the way you give someone a look, the way you pass a phrase to someone else. Those are all my goals. It goes back to CCR: content, communication, reception. It's a feeling you get when you walk on stage. You can feel the energy of the audience and you feed off of it. You feed off of your colleagues. I am not directly answering your question, but what I am doing, what I am doing is telling you that I'm telling you about all of the ingredients that go into what I try to do. Um, it's about trusting your colleagues. It's about liking your colleagues. Our audiences can tell when we don't like each other on stage, right?
Mm-hmm.
My biggest compliment is when people say, "You all, whoever it is on stage, you all look like you're having so much fun." Um, that is my goal. Yes, I'm a very physical player. I do move a lot. My students sometimes make fun of me for my stick heights. Remember, I'm really tall, so my stick heights look taller than yours.
It's proportional. It's proportional.
So, yes, I'm talking to a few people who used to make fun of me and make memes about it. Okay. But yeah, you have to connect with your audience. You need to engage with them. From the moment you walk on stage, you need to make eye contact with your audience. You need to have physical contact with your audience through the air that's in the room. You need to have visual and physical contact with the other players on stage. You need to connect with them. It's not just me, Josh. It's all of us. And as you get further along in your life in music, aka career, maybe you can choose who you play with, right? And you can choose those players that help you in your goal to give joy to the audience. I mean, that's why we do it. There's this movie called Billy Elliot. It then became a musical. It's about a young male dancer from Northern Ireland, I believe. Grows up, he's like the only male dancer in his town. He gets made fun of. I think he gets bullied. Anyway, he makes it. He goes to London. He gets his debut in a ballet, and he's off stage. And then the movie, it's a great movie. They do this like flashback of all of his training and everything, and they do it so that it reminds this young dancer why he does it. He does it because it brings joy to himself, to his family, and to his audience. It also reminds him of all the work he's done to get there. So I think it's important for us to remind ourselves about all the work we've done to get to where we are, and the sacrifices we've made, all the hours and hours and hours of practice. Um, all of those things come together when you walk on stage.
Wow, that's a great answer. That's one of my very favorite answers, and one of my favorite things of this interview so far is like, play with your friends, not because you're just trying to be friends, but because it'll make you a better musician. You
Yeah,
know, play with
yeah,
those people, play with those people you really love and care about, because you're gonna push yourself and make better music that way. That's a hot take. That is like, it's kind of self-evident, like it's kind of obvious, but sometimes it's not obvious. Sometimes we choose. I remember being in school and sometimes thinking about that, like, who should I ask to get to play with this ensemble? Like, should I
yeah.
ask someone I know? Should I try to go recruit like who I think is the best
Right.
violinist I've ever met, or what, this sort of questions. Like, just play with people who make you really happy when you're around them, no matter what. That's such a good answer. I love that. So thanks,
Thank
Joe. That's
Oh,
awesome.
Josh, thank you. And it won't happen immediately. It will take years. It might take decades to find those people. Um,
Mm,
these days everybody can play. There are a lot
yeah,
of good players out there. But who do we call? We call the nice people, the people we like to play with, the people who
yeah,
communicate, who have empathy and an understanding. So I agree with you, Josh.
yeah. That's beautiful. I love it. And we're talking about all these things, and I could go on and on, Joe, because I've got a lot of respect for you. But I'd like to know, what do you stink at, Joe? What are you absolutely terrible at? Because you're real good at percussion. So what are you not so good
Can't
at?
cook. Can't cook.
Can't cook.
Don't
That's
cook.
that's a classic one. So what do you do? Are you just you're just on Uber Eats every day?
I've never done Uber Eats,
Okay.
and I keep getting these emails from them because I do use Uber,
Yeah.
but I've never succumbed to that. I used to go out a lot, but
Mhm.
it's expensive. So
Yeah.
I do some frozen meals. I make a lot of pasta, fruits and veggies. I can do. Um, we have a sophomore at Indiana University who's really good at baking, and he every week he'll bring in food, baking goods for the studio. And he brought in some brownies this week, which were just awesome. And then I had a rehearsal with he and three others, and I asked him how he made it. It was very, very complicated, and it just reminded me how bad I am at all things kitchen related. So
Everyone's taking notes. I
yeah,
want to start an ensemble with Joe Gramley. Need to cook for Joe Gramley.
right, right.
I
I'm
love it.
absolutely terrible at it.
I
Yeah.
love it. So what's something most people don't know about you, Joe?
Um, this goes back to I mentioned family before.
Hmm.
One of the experiences of my life that people don't know about me is that I have a sister who's developmentally disabled, mentally handicapped. Um, there are other words that people use, but we are going to use the words developmentally disabled, and we are going to use the words mentally handicapped. Older sister shaped my view of the world, especially being the youngest, and the way people would react to her in public, and the way people would make fun of her. But yet, what I learned from my parents and my brothers and sisters, and how we helped her and how we treated her, um, really, really shaped my view of the world, and how to be kind to people and how to respect everybody. Yeah, there's some mean people out there. Um, and we experienced that when we went out in public. So that is something that most people don't know about me. But what it might tell people is that it really shaped my view of the world and hopefully how I treat people with respect and understanding.
Well, I remember that I'm talking about JSPS a lot on this interview. I mean, we shared time together there, so it's
Yeah.
one of the reasons. Um, it's just flooding back with memories. I remember I went to play Bach Fugue
Hmm.
in G minor,
Hmm.
and it wasn't bad, but it wasn't great. I remember like line 3. I was just like, I am in the middle of line 3
Right.
and I don't know what is in the middle of line 4. I was just like
Right.
out to lunch, right? And
Right.
I remember just being like devastated because I was like, I'm never going to get into this school anymore. I just made a fool of myself in front of all these people I really care about. This is like the biggest event I've ever done and the biggest performance I've ever done. And now this is what everyone's going to think of me. And I was a wreck. And I was just in the nearest dance studio completely by myself, just like,
Mm,
beside myself, upset. And you came in and you were like, yo, man, like it happens. You got another piece to play. And
mm,
then I went up and played like a movement from like Time for Marimba and crushed it and felt amazing. And then you were like, yeah, that's you. You're good. And I
yeah.
and I and I like those sorts of little moments like that could have gone so differently. Like that could have been a career changer, like going, and then if you hadn't have come in and helped me out in that moment emotionally, maybe, Time for Marimba doesn't go so well. And then maybe, I don't know. And then maybe I don't feel so great. Maybe the audition there is a bad experience and I don't get in and da, da, da. And you start thinking of all these things, and these little moments of kindness in our life can change everything. And you never know who might need that in their day. So yeah, being kind seems to be an important theme of today. One, because it's good for the world, but it's also good for our community as
Yeah.
musicians, and having a life in music. Life's way too short to be grumpy and mean to each other.
Yeah.
So
Could
yeah,
not could not agree more, Josh. It's a great story. Yeah.
yeah. And speaking of New York, you've lived in New York, you've worked a ton in New York. We've been talking about New York quite a bit. So what do you love about that city, Joe?
Uh, many, many things. First comes to mind the energy that I feel when I'm in New York. Um, the fact that it's a cultural center, that everything goes through New York:
Mm,
music, art, theater, musical theater, fashion, finance, commerce,
yeah.
travel. Uh, everything goes through New York
Mhm.
at a certain point, right? I love the multicultural makeup of the residents when I'm on the subway. Um, uh, all of the above, I think number one, energy. Number
Mhm.
two, everything is there. Number three, the people.
That's awesome. Or do you have anything taking you to New York in the near future? Are you going to be there at all?
Just got back. We just had a show. The Knights had a show at Carnegie Hall.
Oh, you were just there. How funny. Okay, cool.
Yeah, last week we did four pieces. I played on three. It was a hard program. We had three rehearsals to get it together. That's the other thing. If you're not ready at the first rehearsal, it's going to be maybe a rough ride.
Man, it's an electric city. And that what you're talking about multiculturalism is one of the reasons I moved back to Houston after being in Malaysia. My wife is from China. My
Mhm.
mother-in-law is living with us right now. And Houston is one of those special cities where you can feel right at home no matter who you are. And I
Mhm.
definitely feel that way about New York too. It's
Oh,
been, and so I just was thinking, I asked you that question because I just feel like as much as Yo-Yo Ma shaped you, it's almost like that character plays a part too, and has played a part in both of our lives. It's just that city it's a character and mentor all of its own. Do you have any good New York stories for us, or do you have any things about the city that you feel like it taught you?
yes, I do. I love what you said about all the different types of cultures that are in
Mm,
Houston and that are in New York. Um, we play music from all over the world if we think about it,
mm,
right? Especially these days, many more Asian composers. And
mm.
having been in Malaysia, I'm sure you played a ton of music by denizens or residents of that country
Yep.
and that region.
Hmm.
Um, having toured, I don't know, 20 or 25 times to China, Japan, Korea, Singapore, um, I I love the opportunity to play music from other cultures. Um, and those cultures are also in New York. So oftentimes you'll get a composer that's from another country that gives you a piece. And that's one of the things I really love. The Knights just did a piece by Du Yoon, and it was super cool, super out there. And we had to do a lot of really strange things with our instruments, really unique sounds. So yeah, New York brings that out in musicians. It brings out an openness. It brings out the opportunity to play music from other cultures because the city is so vibrant and diverse.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a really wonderful place. I was very happy to spend 6 years there.
Yeah,
It is an intense place. You have to be an intense person to thrive in New York.
yeah, yeah. I mean, it can chew you up and spit you out a little bit. So
For sure.
you gotta be like aware of how much energy you can expend in New
Yeah.
York. Yeah.
And then
So
you got to go lay out in Sheep's Meadow and just like
exactly.
eyes, mind and eyes up to God and just say like, please, please, just 5 minutes of non-taxi horns and
Yeah, yeah,
please, like, can I just
yeah.
have this moment? Um, but Joe, it has been such a pleasure to have you on. We are so excited for your upcoming residency with us. I was going to ask you about it, but you already answered all these cool things, all these new pieces that that you've taken on recently, and how we're going to talk through them and what you have
Mhm.
found if in these pieces in order to be successful with them, and just how they've taught you and how you apply your technique to them. And we're really excited to have you come on the platform, and I'm just very excited to have you as a longtime friend. It's really, really special to have you coming to teach with us after knowing you for all these years, and I feel it's very full circle. So I appreciate you so much, Joe. Thank you so much.
Josh, thank you, and congratulations on everything that you're doing. The playing, the production, the entrepreneurship, all of it. It's very, very impressive. Um, you're making great change. Um, Offline, before we started talking today, I told you that I feed off a positive energy. So I want to thank you for that. I also want to thank you for this opportunity. And I really am looking forward to this class next Wednesday.
It's going to
Thank
be
you.
awesome. Guys, thank you so much. And for all of you who are joining us online on YouTube today or wherever you are in the world, it's been great to see you. And we look forward to seeing a lot more of you at the Percussion Conservatory.
Great.
Take care,
Josh,
everybody.
thank you. Have a great night.
Bye,
Thanks.
guys. Have a good one.
Bye bye.